Tesla FSD. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's so dangerous. We have to be super, super scared all the time, except that we don't. There's a Tesla employee who died in a crash, but the facts surrounding it are not great. Joining me to discuss this is my good buddy Herbert from Brighter. Let's talk about it and get a little brighter. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So, Herbert, I don't know if you saw this, but terrible, terrible news. And I do mean it's actually terrible. It resulted in a fatality. Wife of
Mhm.
Tesla employee who died in what may have been the first full self-driving crash said she and her husband were guinea pigs. Now, well, I've got some bones to pick with all the coverage I've seen. I've seen the Washington Post coverage, I've seen the Daily Mail's coverage, and all of them include a lot of nuggets of truth, but a whole lot of dishonesty. Speculation that results in dishonesty. I'm showing this one because it is the least intrusive with its
Mhm.
ads and trash on the screen. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this, but in 2022, he veered off a mountain road and into a tree. Told the Washington Post, "We were guinea pigs of the tech." Uh, Model 3 veered off the road, barreled into a tree, bursting into flames. Have you heard anything about this crash?
Oh yeah, of course. I've been following this along, trying to understand what is real, what isn't real. So it's first reported by Washington Post. It certainly happened 2022, but it took this long for them to finally come out with it. And right away, Elon and Rohan Patel, who is a VP of Business Development for Tesla, they came out and said this is false. The way it's being described, that the driver was not on full self-driving. The person was drunk 3 times over the legal limit. And when you're at that level, you really don't know what you're doing, can't handle anything. He did have a passenger, and that passenger survived. They are claiming that this person was on FSD, but actually, what they were able to 30 seconds before the crash, right? It was autopilot, is what the person was on, and they could not retrieve anything because the car burst into flames and the driver died. So, the idea that was it FSD, Tesla, to cause this? Well, you know what I mean? If it was quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And in this
Right.
case, the guy was 3 times legal limit of drunk. There's nobody arguing that this was a drunk driver. And then Elon basically said, it's actually unfortunate because if he had full self-driving on, the chances of it hitting a tree would have been much less. And so I tend to believe that that's the case, that he was not on it. He was probably just on autopilot, and that's what they're confusing.
So his friend, uh, and they're putting too much weight into this, who survived the accident, said he had been using the auto drive feature. Now, that could be
Right.
autopilot and that could be
Yeah.
FSD, but auto drive feature is not
Yeah.
sufficiently clear. And the vehicle just
Yeah.
ran off straight off the road. Oh, and this little bit of silliness.
Hmm.
Robert Madden of Colorado State Patrol told the Post that there were no skid marks, which would have indicated that the vehicle attempted to brake, but there were rolling tire marks, meaning power was still being deployed to the wheels after the crash.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I have a problem with this. When
Yeah.
airbags deploy,
Yeah.
the 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 drive it doesn't continue. The wheels, I mean, it disengages at that point. It disengages. Why would the software continue driving after airbags deploy? It's likely that the wheels just had inertia, that they had their own
Hmm.
momentum. That's a more likely, but even if he was driving it himself, I think that would be even more grounds for belief that that he was in control, because you can keep your foot on the pedal, especially if you don't know which pedal's which. Now, when you said 3 times the legal limit, his blood alcohol was point 0.25 or 0.26. That is very, very high.
That's high.
At point 0.2,
Yeah.
most people cease to function normally. Like, you
Yeah.
can't really do much. At 0.26, you could have
Yeah.
medical issues that require urgent attention. Drunk is a bit of an understatement. He was like blackout drunk. The fact that the passenger only remembers bits and pieces likely has more to do with his own intoxication than
Exactly.
the crash
Exactly.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely unfortunate. Uh, the other thing that was pointed out, Elon took to X to say he didn't have FSD downloaded on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Now, I had posted a tweet saying employees don't get FSD automatically. And I was contacted by a Tesla employee who said, oh, but at least in the past, they did. At
Hmm.
least in the past, he knows for sure that they did. He or she. I didn't ask for clarification. And I have heard people say, no, as a Tesla employee, I also received it. But I know of an employee who paid for it. But what was pointed out was you get one free FSD. If you have more than one car, the second car you have to purchase it for. So the employee I talked to, I know that the car that he had bought was his second car. His wife has the other car. So that would make sense that he would purchase it for the second car. If this guy is a Tesla superfan and has a wife and child, it is also quite possible that this was his second car, which would make sense that he didn't didn't
Didn't
use it
have it.
yet. Didn't
Hmm.
had not used it. And if I decide to operate my vehicle in an illegal manner, who is responsible?
Yeah. Let me position it this way, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Okay. Let me ask you this question. So number one, okay, which is more believable, right? Scenario one is this guy, despite the fact that he was drunk, he had full self driving on, and full self driving steered him into the tree and killed him because of full self driving. Or scenario two, which is more likely, the guy was 3 times the legal limit. He was so drunk that that if he had full self driving on, it would have prevented him from hitting the tree, which is more likely, right?
Right.
Step one or step two. And the most likely thing is that he was really drunk and the guy was going to crash a tree. He did not have full self driving. That's why he hit the tree. Whether or not the gas was pressed forward and somehow that means that it must have been full self driving. That's actually the opposite, right? If the car crashes and all this information was there, the car would not be continuing to push forward and all that, that stuff. It's complete opposite. So for me, it's you know what I mean? It's like you just have to go with the most logical. This guy was drunk out of his mind, didn't know what he was doing, didn't have FSD. He had autopilot on, which is steer on a highway, and they crashed. That's all there is to it.
In the Daily Mail's article, they said that according to the passenger, the vehicle had a couple times, 2 or 3 times that day, behaved erratically that forced him to take the wheel, that forced interventions. If
Okay.
that's the case, which I don't see any reason to doubt, I've had interventions myself while using both autopilot and FSD, more with FSD than autopilot. It makes it even clearer that the driver was aware of the limitations of the system and chose, rather than to acknowledge them and be present in the moment as required by law and by the terms of service, and the warnings and the constant nags, uh, that he chose to operate it in a genuinely deadly way. And his wife is saying that they were sold a false sense of security, but
What?
I, I don't think that's a reasonable take on
No,
it.
false sense of security. What?
Yeah, they were sold,
Nobody ever told you that you should drive this when you're drunk and that's going to save you if you're in that scenario.
especially
That's
as an
not,
employee and a super fan. Surely you know better.
yeah.
And some people gamble on their finances, on their lives, on the lives of those around them. It doesn't. It is truly regrettable that someone died at all in such a way with a wife and a young child at home. But the idea that Washington Post loves to pile on, Business Insider loves to pile on, Daily Mail, if it bleeds, and it did, it leads. So these are, you know, unfortunate circumstances, but why on earth would we blow it out of proportion like this when we know that vehicles operating with various levels of autonomy are the safest cars on the road? And even Teslas without autonomy are safer than the average. But with the autonomy engaged, it's safer still. Because while you can't take your eyes off the road, please don't do that, you now have essentially two drivers. You have the car driving and you supervising. It it gives you not just a second set of eyeballs, but 360 views around you
Yeah.
with 8 eyeballs. So I don't know what to make of it. Uh, in the comments, I'd love to know from you guys what do you think should be done differently? What could be done differently? How do we need to address this in the future?
Yeah.
Can we make it any clearer that you should not drive while intoxicated? If you need to purchase a breathalyzer, I guess maybe go do that. But if you're so drunk you need to close one eye to focus, maybe you
Well, I mean, yeah, let's step back, right? I mean, the whole point of why we're doing all this is to stop these accidents, to stop the deaths that are occurring needlessly because of human drivers. Human drivers are pathetic. They do these things. They do drive while they're drunk. This is another example of a human driver doing the stupidest things that causes accidents, not only to themselves. In this case, he died, could have killed his passenger, could have killed other people. That's why we're doing full self-driving. That's why we're working on this path. This will stop these things. It's not quite ready yet. So any kind of attempt by a news organization to try to paint bad light on this, you've got the blood in your hands, not Tesla. You are slowing down if you are trying to cause this, backlash by society. Tesla's cars are not trying to kill you. They're trying to make you safer. And as the 8 cameras and the autopilot and the human and full self-driving get better and better and better, you're less likely to hit a tree than what happened here. So what's the point? To get more clicks, to get a little bit of extra pennies in your pocket, but you are trying to do your best to stop the one thing that can actually stop all these deaths. So
and it's crazy when I made the video about Clown O'Dan and his endless crusade
yeah,
via the Dong Project. He was
yeah.
what was pointed out. Someone mentioned, "Well, do you think this actually affects Tesla's sales?" And I said,
Mhm.
"No, because it's not like people are choosing a different autonomous uh, driver assistance program over Tesla. It's that people will continue to buy Teslas, but they won't use the safety features. That's
Yeah.
blood on your hands. That's the real risk. Is that people won't understand the technology and use it to their benefit. And it's genuinely unfortunate. In the comments, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Leave it. Subscribe, like, do all the usual things. Maybe head over to Get a Little Brighter with Herbert right there. He's on YouTube. He's on X. He's
Yeah.
everywhere you want to be, like American Express. So, yeah, guys, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I can't wait to hear from you clever robots on the flippity flop.